As far back as 1892, Scientific American noted that cancer was most prevalent among the branches of the human race where carnivorous habits prevail. The Inuit people, also known as Eskimos, seem to be the only population in the world approximating the Atkins diet, living on flesh. Despite having the highest calcium intakes in the world, they also have some of the worst rates of osteoporosis. People in some villages get over 2,500 milligrams per day, almost 5 times what most Americans get due to eating many of their fish whole, bones and all. The unusually rapid bone loss, found in every study ever published on Inuit bone health, is blamed on the acidic effect of a meat diet. The Harvard Nurses' Health Study, which followed 85,000 nurses for 12 years, found that those who ate animal protein had a significantly higher risk of bone fracture. Muscle protein has a high sulfur content. When people eat animal products, the sulfur forms acid in their bodies that must be neutralized to maintain a proper internal pH balance. One way our bodies can buffer the sulfuric acid load is with calcium borrowed from our bones. People on high animal protein diets can lose so much calcium in their urine that it can actually solidify into kidney stones. Over time, animal protein leaches enough calcium from bones to increase the risk of osteoporosis. According to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, research has shown that a quarter pound of beef raises insulin levels in diabetics as much as a quarter pound of straight sugar. Evidence clearly shows that the intake of animal products is associated with increased risk of cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. For over 40 years, medical reviews have shown the detrimental impact of dietary cholesterol consumption. Meat consumption itself is directly related to obesity and coronary heart disease. Animal protein intake has been linked to brain tumors, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, stomach cancer, endometrial cancer, kidney cancer, laryngeal cancer, esophageal cancer, lung cancer, and colon cancer. The International Agency for Research on Cancer concluded that those eating just 2 ounces of meat a day, like bacon or ham, had a 50% greater risk of developing cancer of the colon or the rectum. 2 ounces is just one big hot dog. Other research found that those eating more than 5.5 grams of meat a day, roughly a single teaspoon of ground beef, had over twice the risk of developing colon or rectal cancer. Followers of the Atkins diet eat as much as 156 grams of protein a day, over 250% of what most people need. Carbohydrates burn cleanly. Carbohydrate means carbon dioxide and water, which are what plants make carbs out of. Carbon dioxide and water are all the waste products one is left with after the body used carbohydrates as fuel. When one is eating enough carbohydrates, fat can be completely broken down. Without carbohydrates, the body goes into starvation mode. Its only choice is to burn fat inefficiently using a pathway that produces toxic byproducts such as acetone and other so-called ketones. This is very hard on the body, and in order to wash these toxic waste products out of the system, the body uses a lot of water. The diuretic effect of low carbohydrate products and diets result in people losing a gallon of water in pounds the first week, which is what encourages dieters to continue. If one wanted to lose only water weight, a more healthy approach is to use a sauna. Snackwell's and Nabisco's line of low-fat and fat-free junk food. Often people mistake low-fat for low-calorie. The recommendation to cut down on fat was to get people to cut down on items like meat and to switch to foods that were naturally low in fats like beans, whole grains, fruits and vegetables. A similar phenomenon has happened with the low carb. companies take advantage of the public's ignorance. Junk food is still junk food. A recent study of 11,000 people found that only 1 in 4 people on a low-carb diet were actually cutting carbs at all. Most didn't know that tomatoes were high in carbs, half didn't know apples were high in carbs, and 1 in 6 thought steak was a carbohydrate. The only way one loses weight is by calories. Calories count every time, all of the time. The results of a Harvard study of 75,000 women over a decade suggest that the more fruit and vegetables the women ate, the less likely they were to become obese. A study by the National Cancer Institute determined that the dietary behavior associated with expanding waistlines is meat consumption. The behavior associated with losing abdominal fat was high vegetable consumption. Harvard studied 75,000 women for a decade, and the results suggest that the more whole grains people ate, the lower their risk of having a heart attack. Harvard studied 40,000 men for a decade and suggested that eating whole grains may cut the risk of diabetes by more than half. It may be no coincidence that the longest living people in the world, even by some accounts outlasting the Okinawan Japanese, are the California Seventh-day Adventist vegetarians. The most healthful diet in the world is also the one most successful in weight control: grains, legumes, fruits and vegetables. One can add nuts to the list as well, since despite their caloric density, a 2003 review concluded that eating nuts every day might help one maintain or even lose weight. The optimal diet is one centered around good carbohydrates, that is, unrefined, good fats like nuts, and the best sources of protein, which according to the Harvard School of Medicine are beans, nuts, grains and vegetables. There is evidence that some types of plant fat, such as olive oil, may protect against breast cancer. A University of Cambridge study found that women eating 34 grams of saturated fat a day seemed to roughly double their risk of breast cancer compared to women who only ate 11 grams of saturated fat. Fruit consumption seems to protect one from numerous cancers and may reduce heart disease mortality, cancer, and total mortality. Those eating just 25 grams of fiber a day seem to cut their risk of colon and rectal cancer by 40%. Ideal LDL or bad cholesterol levels are between 50 and 70, although an LDL level below 100 milligrams is often considered optimal for all individuals. According to the American Journal of Cardiology, the only 2 groups in America that seem to consistently reach that goal are those on cholesterol-lowering medication and those on a pure vegetarian diet. For Americans to drop from 130 to under 100 milligrams, they need at least a 23% drop in LDL. That's exactly how much a low-fat vegetarian diet can decrease LDL in 3 weeks, based on a study of 4,587 adults. What do doctors know about nutrition? Even as recently as 2004, less than half of all US medical schools have a single mandatory course in nutrition. The truth is that we have known for 80 years that the protein found in beef, fish, and poultry increases calcium loss through the urine. Just 1 serving of meat a day significantly increases the risk of bone fracture. If Americans adopted a vegetarian diet, says Dr. William Castelli, director of the Framingham Cardiovascular Center, then the heart disease epidemic would disappear.